Is Mexico safe on a motorcycle?
The U.S. government is warning Americans to reconsider traveling to Tijuana.
American tourist in recovery back in the U.S. and telling his story tonight about a nightmare in Mexico.
Week of attacks across Mexico.
And U.S. citizens warned to avoid certain areas, including Tijuana.
Tijuana.
In Tijuana.
Violence in Tijuana is concerning for the millions of Mexican Americans in Southern California.
Alright, if you don't have a couple of minutes and just want the short answer, yeah, you're probably going to be okay. Just don't do anything stupid and be prepared to have some patience. Let's dig in. Is Mexico safe on a motorcycle? Well, with cartel activity and border tensions rising, I'm sure lots of people are wondering if it's safe to travel to Mexico. From visiting the rustic cities of central Mexico to exploring Baja's secluded beaches, Mexico has a ton to offer travelers. However, due to the presence of drug cartels, corrupt police, and border policy issues, there are some risks associated with traveling to this popular country. Now, add a motorcycle to the mix, and there's a much higher risk for things to get spicy south of the border. Let's start with corrupt police. It's not uncommon for police to extort bribe money from travelers. This can be an unpleasant experience, but it's usually nothing more than just a minor inconvenience. Think of it as paying a toll to pass, and it definitely shouldn't stop you from visiting Mexico. If you do happen to run into this kind of thing, it's important to remain calm and polite. Fortunately, this hasn't ever happened to us before, but every time we're down there, we hear stories about it. Alright, on to cartels. Drug trafficking and related crimes have been a big problem in Mexico for decades, and the country has struggled to contain the violence associated with organized crime groups. Previously, the cartels were largely confined to certain less touristy parts of Mexico. However, there has been an uptick recently involving crime and violence around the border and tourist destinations. My tip here is to avoid the border towns you hear about on the news, like Tijuana and Juarez. There are much safer places just south, a little further like Ensenada. How do we mitigate these risks? Here's some tips that I use. Learn Spanish. In fact, I'm terrible at Spanish. Hell, I'm terrible at English, but I can get around just fine in Mexico. I'm not fooling anyone with my Spanish, and I'm sure that I'm that gringo when we're off the tourist path due to my poor Spanish. I can still order food, get a hotel, buy gas, get groceries, and most importantly, order an ice-cold beer. I also cheat when I can, and I bring a list of common phrases for when I can't remember exactly what to say, or if I need to ask them to say something slower. The more Spanish you know, the easier it is to get out of a situation. There's apps like Duolingo and Babbel that you can use. I've used them both. I'm still not very good at Spanish, but I'm working on it. Finances. All right, hide your money and keep a decoy wallet. In fact, split your money up into 3 places. A decoy wallet with about 20 or less US dollars in it, and small bills, maybe 1s and 5s, and no more than 400 pesos in small bills. I throw in there some expired credit cards and an expired ID. This decoy wallet is what you're going to use to pay for most small things. And also what you're first going to give up if you have to. Your real wallet should have about half the cash for your trip and half of your IDs and cards. Always keep a third stash in case you lose your wallet or somebody sees you use it and tries to rob you for it. Hide your third stash somewhere that's much harder to find and get to, and only adjust your pesos and dollars between wallets in your hotel room. Try to use small bills when possible. Breaking a 500 peso bill to buy a beer or to pay a toll might draw some unwanted attention. Have a plan and a plan B, and just go with the flow. This last trip did not go at all to plan. We were supposed to meet with the rest of our group on night 2, but due to some bad weather and some terrible road conditions, our situation changed drastically. We did not consider an alternate plan when we first set off. However, we kept a good attitude and ended up having an amazing adventure anyways. Next time, I will have some hotels and restaurants picked out as a plan B. It could have been much worse since our phones did not have service and internet was limited both in availability and speed, making it difficult to research places while traveling. A quick side note, you must use country codes when dialing from a US phone in Mexico. This might be common sense to some people. I think I remembered this rule on the last night of the trip. Easy way to remember it here. If you're calling someone in Mexico, you would type +52 in front of the 10-digit phone number. And to call the US from a US phone while in Mexico, you must dial +1 or +001. Have patience and be kind. You are not at home. When you're in Mexico, you're a visitor. So treat others with kindness and have patience. There may be much more going on than you realize in a situation, and a simple smile or perdón might get you much further than it will at home. Almost all of the Mexican people that I've dealt with have been extremely accommodating. They will offer up their home, food, and support. In fact, it's one of the main reasons I keep coming back to Mexico. Situational awareness is probably my best advice. If you take one thing from this video, trust your gut, and I would advise you to bring your partner along if possible. I know that Itchy Boots and Ed from CT90 Adventures and many others have traveled through Mexico solo on motos just fine, but having a buddy or two always helps, even if it's just watching your bike while you're in the baño. Never let your guard down and don't go alone at night. Whether it's riding or walking down the street, you can be taken advantage of much easier at night. Those are my 5 tips for staying safe in Mexico. Traveling to Mexico on a moto can be an exciting prospect for many people, but is it really safe? The answer is both yes and no. While much of Mexico can be considered relatively safe, there are certain areas and situations where safety risks exist and should be taken into account. It certainly has been safe for us, a couple of gringos riding motorcycles both in central Mexico and Baja.